here and his handy sidekick, Freddie, whatever. We have too many dogs. This is Freddie. All right, go ahead, take it away.
Freddie's here to coach me, in case I forget what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a seductive narrative voice. And that's a writer whose style of writing is so entertaining in and of itself, he can lead the reader anywhere. And there are many examples of this. Shakespeare is one, although some people find Shakespeare a little awkward because his word constructions are antiquated. But he coined so many phrases that we use today that we say them without thinking about them, without knowing where they came from, such as parting is such sweet sorrow. But let's move into modern times. There are two extremes to the seductive narrative voice. At one end, you have a writer whose use of the language is so elegant and fanciful that you love to read it just for the music of the words. A lot of these writers require that you have a dictionary at your elbow at all times. One of them is Anthony Burgess, who wrote A Clockwork Orange. Burgess wrote a lot of other books, and most of them are wildly entertaining. I recommend him. Another is Michael Chabon, who's most famous for The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. Chabon also wrote a novel about a record store in Berkeley called Telegraph Avenue. There's a chapter in it that's 3,000 words long. It's about a parrot that escapes from its cage. And it's all one sentence. I've read it, and at no point did I slow down or get bored. Now that's the mark of a gifted writer. And that's what we mean by a seductive narrative voice. Another one of my favorites is Raymond Chandler, who created Philip Marlowe, the archetype of the anti-hero, the archetype of the private detective who down these mean streets must go to protect his honor and the honor of his clients. Chandler coined so many memorable phrases that they rattle around in my head. One of them is, he was about as inconspicuous as a tarantula on angel food. Another one is, from 20 feet away, she looked like $1,000,000. From 10 feet away, she looked like a woman who was designed to be seen from 20 feet away. At the other end of the extreme is the narrative voice that's invisible. And that means that the writer is so skilled at describing events and putting you in the scene that you never notice his style. You're living the adventure the way he intended. And I think the best modern example of this is Michael Connelly, the crime writer, who's responsible for the Bosch series, Harry Bosch Detective, and the Lincoln Lawyer series, both of which have been turned into TV shows. Both TV shows are superb, and the reason is that each season is based on one of Connelly's novels. And when you base a television series on a novel from a good writer, that series is going to sing in every frame because it's based on a really good book. Bernard Cornwell is a great historical writer. There's a series on Netflix called The Last Kingdom. There's six years worth. It's about the struggle for the control of England in the 9th century. And every line in it is superb. And once again, it's because it's based on Bernard Cornwell's novels. I recommend that too. But let's talk about literature itself. In the style of the seductive narrative voice, I'm going to show you two examples that are about as different from each other as they could be. One is Stephen Hunter. He's a great writer, great thriller writer. He wrote the novel Shooter, which was turned into a movie and then a TV series. His protagonist for most of his books is Bob Lee Swagger, who was a sniper in Vietnam, a legendary sniper. He's loosely based on a real man named Andre Hathcock, Hathcock, who was a real sniper in Vietnam and had a kill count of over 100. But this is about Bob Lee's father, Earl Swagger, whose adventures take place in the post-war period, but this one takes place during World War II. The Bullet Garden is about a grove of wild trees in Europe that the Nazis own through their snipers. They know where to sit, they know where to crouch, and they know where the enemy is coming from. And the Allies can't figure it out, so every time they enter this area, they sustain casualties. But what I'm going to read for you is the language of an English intelligence officer. And you can just hear this guy. This is what I mean by a seductive narrative voice. Dear Roger, listen to the American lieutenant here. Do you think the Americans would have sent a fellow so far as they've sent this one just to tell you lies? This fellow is an actual son of the earth. His pater was a farmer. He raises wheat and cows and fights red Indians as in the movies. He is tall, silent, noble. He is a walking myth. Listen to him. It's because you're all so similar, he said, as if he'd given the matter a great deal of right, proper Oxonian thought. It has to do with gene pools. In our country, or in Europe, on the whole, the gene pool is much more diverse. You see that in the fantastic European faces, really. Go to any city in Europe, and the variety in such features as eye spacing, jawline, height of forehead, width of cheekbones is extraordinary. I could watch it for days. But you Yanks seem to have about 3 faces between you, and you pass them back and forth. Yours is the farm boy face, rather broad, no visible bone structure, pleasant, but not sharp enough to be particularly attractive. I fear you'll lose your hair prematurely. Your people do have good, healthy dentition, I must give you that. But all the plumpness on the face, you must eat nothing but cake. It goes to your face and turns you rather balloonish, and it's bloody hard keeping you apart. You remind me of at least 6 other Americans I know, and I can't remember their names either. Wait, one of them is a chap called Carruthers. Do you know him? And that character has such a distinctive voice, and he's so entertaining when he talks that you're just lapping those words up one by one like a dog following a trail of crumbs through the house. At the other end of the extreme is James Ellroy. You may not know who he is, but you've all seen L.A. Confidential. He wrote that novel. He's one of the great American crime writers. I also recommend The Big Nowhere. This is before he turned to novels. This is a short story he wrote. And I have to point out that Ellroy was heavily influenced by the scandal rags of the 60s, which were everywhere. There were weekly tabloids which said major Hollywood star caught in love nest, stuff like that people lap up. They're around today, but now it's mostly on the internet. But back then, Ellroy ate this stuff up. And having learned from them, he absorbed certain factors, which I'm going to point out. One is the short sentence like a machine gun, and another is the use of alliteration, heavy use of alliteration. Russ Custer ran Hollywood Homicide. He took no shit. He brooked no shit. He brooded over bonded bourbon nightly. He favored Rubens, the Firefly, and the Hilltop Hungarian. Hollywood hemmed him in. He shit where he ate. He kept a condo on Cahuenga. He warred with his wife there. They battled over his bitches in his Walpurgisnachttian workload. I grabbed Russ in the squad room. He checked out my rhino regalia. I love rhinos. I've got a faux rhino gun belt and faux rhino boots. My faux rhino bedspread captivates coos. I fucked a rhino once. A street creep slipped me a hash brownie. I flew Trans-Zulu Airways to Zimbabwe. It was so good. Russ said, "You look like a fucking pimp. You may be useful here." Those are 2 examples of modern seductive narrative voice. I don't think that aspiring writers should think about their narrative voice. What you want to do is think about the story and tell the story as entertainingly as you can. And that means you lay your words out to convey what you want to convey. Don't get too wordy, don't get too clever. Remember that adjectives are not your friend. But the story comes first, and when you understand story, and you're not worried about what you write or whether anybody's going to like it, you know you have arrived and that you've got a style.
All right. Well, good. Any other words of wisdom for your audience?
I say this every day. Carry a pad and a pen with you at all times if you're a writer, or even if you're not a writer, but it's especially important for writers. When you get an idea, write it down. When you hear a fascinating name, write it down. When you hear somebody using the English language in an entertaining way you've never heard before, write that down. It's important to write dialogue the way real people talk, so keep your ears open.
All right. Thanks so much.